everyone. My name is Dr. Drizzle, and we are so happy that you have joined us today for our first National Parks adventure crossing America. This new adventure is made possible by a generous grant from the National Park Foundation. Our goal for the next 6 months together is to connect students to the past through the lens of the national parks and encourage them to solve challenges that the parks face so that the future will be better. In 1903, U.S. President Theodore Roosevelt took a camping trip in California's Yosemite Valley with a man named John Muir. Roosevelt loved the outdoors, but Muir had invited him to come not just for a camping trip, but to find out ways that they could protect the environment. Today, the country's 424 national park sites are protected treasures, but it takes a lot to keep them that way. So our journey together, you're now part of this whole piece of protecting our national parks, and we're going to learn about their stories, and in turn, you're going to be able to tell yours. We are today at Homestead National Historical Park. Part of the things we're going to be doing is we're going to be keeping a scrapbook. So let's come back to me for just a moment so I can show you a few things that I have ready. I have some paper here, I have scissors, I have some tape, glue sticks, some Post-it notes, but the most important thing that I'm going to have with me right now is paper and pencil. Because as really smart elementary students, we know that we learn by writing things down. So have your pencil ready so you can take notes during our whole piece. So we're going to be scrapbooking. We're going to save pieces of our lives because that's what scrapbooking is all about. Have you ever looked at like family photos and asked, who is that? Or where were you? Many times we take photos and we put them in a box, and then years later we open that box up and it brings back so many memories. Well, we're going to do that. We're going to keep a scrapbook that organizes our pictures and helps keep a journal of what we're learning with the national parks. One of the first things we're going to do today is identify where each park that we're going to visit is located. So as I said, today we are visiting Homestead National Historical Park in Beatrice, Nebraska. If you'll notice on the screen, you'll see a black map and the outline of Nebraska in white on the right-hand side of the screen. On the left-hand side, I've included all the counties in Nebraska and have highlighted Gage County, where Beatrice is located in your scrapbook. So in your scrapbook, I'm going to ask you to write down a couple of things on your paper. First of all, we're at Homestead National Historical Park. Don't panic if you can't spell all of that right now. Just make some notes. And make a note that they're in Nebraska. Now, we're going to be giving your teachers a lot of information when this is over, so you'll have more notes for this. But for right now, we want to make sure we know that we're talking about Nebraska. Another thing that we're going to be scrapbooking is all about history and the history of Homestead National Park. We know that history is like the knowledge and study of the past. It's how we remember things. History is the story of who we are, where we come from, and it really can help us decide where we're headed. We want to talk about the history of Homestead so that we understand its importance. But I'm not the expert in this. We have an expert that's actually here. Ranger Jonathan is joining us from Homestead. So Ranger Jonathan, let's unmute yourself and we're going to ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself and about the history of Homestead. And some of you may recognize Ranger Jonathan because you watched the video last week. So here we go. Welcome, Ranger Jonathan.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
So, Ranger Jonathan, we were with you a couple of weeks ago, and we got to learn a little bit about the history of Homestead. Will you share that with us now?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're all about telling the history of the Homestead Act of 1862, which was a special law signed by President Abraham Lincoln in the middle of the Civil War to promote westward settlement all across the United States. Now, we happen to be located here in Nebraska, in southeast Nebraska, because we're actually on the site of the very first homestead claimed under that law on January 1st, 1863 by Daniel Freeman. But we're a pretty special park. We talk about a lot of places. We don't just talk about where we are here. We talk about 30 different states across the country and the millions of people whose lives were changed by homesteading. So odds are pretty good that you either live in a homesteading state or maybe your family, if you go back enough generations, may have homesteaded themselves.
Well, tell us a little bit about what that Homestead Act does.
Yeah, so the Homestead Act allowed anyone who lived on a piece of land to get that land, to own that land for free. So if you were an adult, if you were 21 years of age or older, you could file a claim for 160 acres of land. And to receive it, you just had to live on it for 5 years, build a house, and start farming. 160 acres is kind of a weird number, right? So I like to break that down and think about something a little smaller. So if you've ever seen a football field or been on a football field, that's about 1 acre. So imagine 160 football fields put together. That's about how much land you'd get under the Homestead Act.
Now, did you have to pay for this?
So the land was free. You had to go to an office and file some paperwork, but the land itself was free.
And I think that you told us that the land was for anybody, right? It didn't just have to be for certain people.
That's right. Yeah, as long as you were eligible to become a citizen of the United States of America, then you were eligible to homestead. So that meant that men could homestead, women could homestead, African Americans could homestead, Latinx people could homestead, anyone who could become a citizen.
I really like the picture that we showed in the video of all of those other states that were part of this Homesteading Act. Can you tell me why some states weren't included in those 30 pictures that we saw in the video?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Basically, the states that were under the Homestead Act were states where the federal government had public domain land, land that they could give away to people who homesteaded. So the states that you couldn't were basically the earliest states, the states that were the original 13 colonies, and then some of the states created out of land that was in those 13 colonies. Otherwise, all of the other states from Florida all the way to Alaska, most of the country was eligible.
That is so interesting. So kids, what I want you to do right now is to write down Homestead Act of 1862. Those are some notes I want you to take somewhere because we're going to be using those notes in just a moment. Ranger Jonathan, thanks for sharing that. Stay on the call because we may come back to you in just a little bit. So let's go to the next part of our project. So as he mentioned, if you could become a citizen of the United States, then you were eligible to get those 160 acres. So I want to talk about stories for a moment. In our scrapbook, we're going to include a map of where the park is. We're going to include a little bit of information about the history, but we also want to tell stories, and this is why. Stories help us understand others and ourselves. In fact, we feel empathy or we understand where characters are coming from when we encounter them in stories. We can learn from these stories. So think about the stories of the homesteaders back in 1863. Who were they? What were they thinking? Were they scared? Were they excited? And I want to share just a few stories with you. This first story is about Mary Mayer. So she was listed as one of the first female homesteaders. Her husband, Philip, and their daughter, Teresa, and her husband actually moved to the homesteads in 1860. Now, this is before the act was published. So they were thinking, we'll just live here until somebody else comes by and says, you need to leave because we're going to buy it. Because they didn't have the money to buy it then. Well, that was 1860. And then in 1862, the act was passed. And in 1863, they could actually sign up to get one of those homestead plots. Well, during the time between 1860 and 1862, Mary Meyer's husband died. But she decided she was going to stay there and file the claim anyway, which I think is really cool because sometimes when we think about homesteading, we think about Little House on the Prairie, and that was a whole family. And that was the most typical experience. In fact, when we were visiting Homestead, we actually got to go into one of the cabins where 10 children and 2 parents lived, and it was really small. But did you know there were thousands of women who came out on their own with small children and who did it on her own? Mary never remarried, and she actually kept that homestead in her name until she sold it into 1877. So remember her name, Mary Meyer. Here's another person. These are the Christman sisters. So they actually wanted to have their own homestead too. All these men were thinking, we're going to go claim our land. Well, they actually went too, but there was a law or a regulation where the head of the household was the husband. So if women wanted to have their own homestead in their name, they couldn't get married for 5 years if they wished their land titled to themselves. Well, the Christman sisters were all about that. And they actually went and filed their claim, and they lived there and went back and forth between the houses. And they were known as well-known members of the community. And the last story I want to tell you is about Jerry Shores. So Jerry Shores and his family lived in Custer County. Jerry was a former slave, but he filed a claim, and he got a claim right beside his brothers, Moses and Henry. Well, we know about him because a relative of that family named Ava remembered stories being told about her grandfather. Now, this is important for us to remember because Ava remembered those stories and told them to other people so they could be remembered today. So what is your story? Someone wrote down the stories of Mary, the Christman sisters, and the Jerry Shores family. It might not have happened immediately. There were probably family members who would pass down the stories verbally, and then someone wrote them down. Well, think about this, kids. This makes me kind of sad. What would have happened if no one had collected their stories? I mean, they still would have been homesteaders, but we wouldn't have known about them. So I want to make sure this doesn't happen to us. As part of your scrapbook, I want you to answer the questions you see on the screen as if you were writing a letter to a friend you haven't seen in quite a while. Now, of course, we're not going to be able to do all of this during our time together, but I want this to be part of your scrapbook where you tell your story. Each of you will be asked to create a scrapbook page and share it with everyone else. Now, you don't have to read your story, but I'm going to encourage you to do that because no story lives until someone wants to listen to it. And the stories we loved best live in us forever. So this adventure so far, we've met a ranger. We've seen a video from Homestead National Park. And if you have it, your teachers have access to that. But we also want to talk about STEM or engineering. So let's take a look at what the STEM Design Challenge is and how we're going to be able to build and create something to make Homestead National Park a better place. Kids, what I want you to think about is I want you to do some research on your area, where you live, if it's a farming area, if it's an urban area, and I want you to create a timeline. So the first homestead was in
1863.
So start at 1863. That's going to be your piece where you start and look at the development of your community, your town, and your city from 1863 until today, and find those implements, if you will, those pieces of technology that helped your town grow into what it is today. List those. You can create a timeline on Google Docs or on Microsoft Word, and then share that with us, making sure you put the different years when these different resources were created. But then we want you to come up with the next best thing. So if you live in a community right now that depends on farming, what is the next thing that you can build, design, or create that will help the farmers? If you live in a city area and you're thinking about maybe transportation and how transportation has changed over the years, what is the next thing that you can create, design, or brainstorm that will help your community, city, or town grow even further? So as we think about how we as kids and adults can help out the national parks, particularly Homestead, we have a challenge for you. The United Nations Global Goal number 9 talks about industry, innovation, and infrastructure. So as we think about how technology has changed over time, it's important to know that we can help make things better for our communities in the world. And we don't have to wait till an adult does it. We can actually take charge ourselves. The first part of your STEM challenge is you're going to be creating a timeline. Now, notice that I've started creating my timeline here. I could have used pencil and paper to do this, but I was able to go online and use Google Slides to start creating a timeline where I'm going to think about what happens in my community in 1863 and then how things have changed over time. Now, I live in a city, in an urban area, so I don't have a lot of agriculture here. So I'm probably going to make my timeline about transportation and see how it's changed over time. I also found this timeline where they've used colors and words and numbers. And this is a historical timeline about agriculture in Richmond, Virginia. Now, you don't just have to use numbers and words. You could also use pictures. So if you're learning about how things have changed in your area over the last 150 years, you could find pictures that you use. Now, here is some information that's very important, kids. Make sure the research that you do is correct. That means find at least 3 resources that all say the same thing to back up your work. It's important that what we do is correct because it's going to help make change come about in your community. The other thing is make it neat and readable. So you can create your timeline with pencil and paper, or you can use something on the computer. The second part of our STEM challenge, and you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, this is so much stuff. And it is, because you've agreed to be part of a community that's trying to change the world. And this design that we're doing is going to help Homestead do even better work at their national park site. So we're going to practice doing this next big thing together. This is some implements or some tools, some farm equipment that we found in Nebraska at Homestead. So I want us to look at this one picture and just give me a thumbs up if you know what this picture is. Just give me a thumbs up in your photo to say, yeah, you know what this is. This is a tractor. So in just a moment, we're all going to practice drawing this tractor. But sometimes I find it hard to draw just looking at a picture. So I've done a couple things for you. I like to see photos and drawings as shapes. So notice that I have made a rectangle out of the front part of the engine. I know that there's some other shapes in that rectangle, but I can go back and add that later. And then in this second picture, I have found some ovals and some circles that sort of identify this tractor. So let's spend just a few minutes together sketching this. So I've got my pen here and I've got my paper, and I'm going to go ahead and on my paper, I'm going to sketch what I think a tractor looks like. Now, you don't have to be perfect at this, and you don't have to have something right in front of your face. I want you to think about a tractor having an engine, so possibly making a rectangle first. And then a tractor is going to have some wheels. It's going to have at least 4 wheels, and those are going to be your circle shapes. I've also noticed that a tractor has a larger wheel in the back. So maybe I'm going to create a larger wheel on the back of my drawing. There also needs to be some place that the farmer sits. So maybe a square box where he can sit with a seat and a steering wheel. I'm going to go back to the deck for just a moment. And let's see the picture again. So I'm going to give you about 1 minute to sketch this tractor. So let's do that right now together. We're all sort of sketching this tractor because we're practicing our engineering skills. If I'm going to ask you to create the next big thing in your community, we need to know how to sketch and come up with a prototype. So if you've actually come up with a cool sketch, please share it. Hold it up in front of your face if you have a design that you like. So let's do this. I'm going to ask you if you want to share your design with the whole group, if you will just click on the little raise hand button. There is a little raise hand button that you can find on your Zoom call. It's actually underneath the little 3 dots on your picture. If you hover over it, let's see if anyone has their hand raised, and we will see. Oh my goodness, we have several of those. Kim and Carissa, if you can sort of help me see these also. I'm going to see if we can get a few people to share their design of their tractor. So let's see where those hands are coming from. Oh my goodness. I love it. I love it. So Mackenzie, can you unmute your screen and just tell us about your design and tell us where you're from?
So I'm from California and my design is this. So basically this is like an engine and this is like mechanical parts, and then the little wheel and the circles for the tires. And then this is kind of where they sit.
Nice. Thanks for sharing that, Mackenzie. So I'll let you mute back again, and I'm going to ask Miss Stover's class if you can unmute and share any of your designs.
There you go. Say hi. Hi. Explain it.
This is my design, and I just have like a box here because that's what I saw in the picture, and I saw all this on the picture, and I just tried to replicate it as good as I can.
I like that. And now you can go back and look at a real picture of a tractor that's, back in the day, not one of the most recent ones, but you can go back and add to that piece. Thank you so much for sharing that. Is there one more in Miss Stover's class? I see someone standing in line there.
So what I have for my tractor is if somehow the wheel got broken or damaged, you should put an emergency control pad. So I put this to the side because I thought that would be really helpful. And I also put a door right here where you can access the engine. That way it's not just in the open. And I also thought about adding some storage to maybe put some crops in. But
so you've already thought of your next best thing. Miss Stover, we'll come back to your class in just a moment. Let me move to the next one. Pearl, would you like to unmute and share your design and tell us where you're from?
I'm from Texas, and this is the tractor. Wait, I'm gonna turn my background. So this is the tractor. So I think that there's like 3 small wheels and then this like big wheel in the front, or like 2 big wheels, just like a side of it.
Okay.
And then the engine is right over there, and then this is like a storage place, or like an extra seat. And then this is the actual seat, and this is the wheel.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that. Mr. Krause's class, I think it's from North Carolina. If you guys can unmute and share a few of your designs.
So this is my tractor, and this is the back wheel, this is the front wheel, and this is where the smoke comes out. This is the driver's seat, and this is the steering wheel. This is the engine where all the gears are, and the motor.
And I love that you have smoke coming out. So that means that you're thinking about how you would power this tractor. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right, Yuri. Yuri, would you like to share?
Yes. So this is my design of a tractor. Right here is one kind of tiny wheel and the big one in the front. I think that will like help with going up like higher, like steep places. And here's the engine. It's right here. It's powered. I think it's I powered it with 2 batteries. And here's where the person sits, and it has a wheel. But yeah.
So I like the resources and energy you're using there, because you're using things that can be renewable and are really not horribly bad for our planet. And I love that you put the big wheel in the front. So most of you students study things like simple machines. So I see wheels and axles. I see pulley systems. I see some levers and some wedges. Thank you for sharing that. Miss Cassidy's class, can you tell us where you're from? Go ahead and unmute.
We are from Fort Mill, South Carolina. And this is Jacob.
Hey, Jacob.
Hello. I made the tractor engine here. I made a steering wheel here. I made the chair, the two small wheel and big wheel.
And I noticed you've taken notes over on the side to add to your scrapbook. Thank you for sharing that. All right, Miss Schwankamp's class, can you share?
Come here. Hurry. Come over here. This is Roxy. We're in Plainfield, Indiana.
So this is my tractor, and I have the so the big wheels on the back and the small wheels on the front, and I try to add texture on the rectangle part of the tractor, and then there's the wheel.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing that. David Valdez, can you unmute and share yours? Now, students, I'm going to tell you, we have a lot of people waiting to share, so we may not get to everyone for this event, but hold in there. We may get to some of you. Go ahead, David.
So I draw a tractor, and you can see I draw a little bird so it can have some gas because it might run out of gas and it might get flat like a low engine.
A remote engine. Okay, I like that. Thank you. Miss Irizarry, can you unmute and share from your classroom and tell us where you're from?
We're from Middleton, Idaho.
And show me your design. Show me your design.
So I just tried sketching it out. And then so we have like the back wheel and then the front wheel and then where it can sit, and I did some like armresters. This is the engine area, and yeah.
Wow, very detailed. Very detailed. I like that. All right. Mega. Okay, Miss Schaffner or Miss Shafter, will you share?
Hi, we are in Meridian, Idaho. Kai, you're going to come right over there to the camera. Sit down, I'm from Meridian, Idaho, and for my tractor, I made no motor. It's like a bike that has pedals right there.
Okay.
And two, like, I don't know what to call them, like hand pedals or something. And it's used to steer them. And there's like a tube there that drops out the seeds.
Thank you for sharing that. I love that it's pedaled. It's using your own energy. Thanks for sharing that. Angela Masters class.
Yep, go ahead, Caleb. Hi, we are from Middleton, Idaho. You see it? There you go.
Good.
Nice and loud, buddy.
This is my tractor. I based it off of tractors today. In the old days, I have a smoker, and it's actually shooting out some smoke. I got the front. I got the engine. I got the small wheel in the front, and the back wheels, the bigger one. And I added those things that are above the
All right, wrap it up.
ones.
Wow, so much detail in that. And I love this. This is so good. Roselia Godby.
Hi. Sorry.
Rosalia?
Yes, so I drew it based with a picture and what I've been listening to. I put in labels. So
Labeled those. That is such a smart thing to do as a scientist and an engineer. So we have time for just a few more. Miss Wilkinson? Wilkerson? Hello.
Can you see it?
Yes.
The engine's right there. Yeah, it's pretty much a normal car.
I like that, and I like that you have a description there. Well, kids, I hate to do this, but we need to keep moving so we can get everybody through today. So we're going to go back to the deck for just a moment. And I just want to say a couple things. One, thank you so much for joining us today. We think this is going to be a huge success. Now, if you didn't get to share yours, do not panic. I'm going to give your teachers a place to share all of these so we can share them with the national parks. From now on, we're going to be doing this twice a month. We're going to be visiting a new national park each month. And on some of those months, we're going to do it at night so your parents can be involved with it. I want you to think about all we've asked you to do today, which is a lot. But we want you to be able to share your scrapbook with us, share your next big thing in technology, and then Ranger Jonathan from Homestead would love for you teachers to reach out to him, and he can talk to your classroom on other visits. We're also going to be sending your teacher a digital and printable badge that you can use for your scrapbook. So all of you here today can get this badge and put it in your scrapbook saying that you are part of this team. Let me ask, I'm going to put in the chat window right now. This is the Padlet where we're going to ask all of you to upload your work. So teachers, if you will grab that, it's bit.ly/Homestead NHP. Make sure that Homestead is capitalized and that NHP is capitalized, because we want you to share all of your work with us. We packed so much into today. So we didn't get to see everybody, but we hope to see you on the Padlet. I'm waving to Miss Hall's class right now from Kentucky. I work with Miss Sherry Hall, so it's good to see you guys here. Here's your next assignment. Join us in December for our next National Parks adventure, Crossing America. We will be in Florida. We won't tell you where we're going to be, but we promise that we will be in one of the 424 national park sites. So be thinking now what national park sites are in Florida and which one we may be coming to you with. Eleanor Roosevelt once stated, "The purpose of life is to live it, to taste experience to the utmost, to reach out eagerly and without fear for newer and richer experience." So we're going to ask all of you students to live your best life, to be kind to each other, to be a good human, and to learn as much as you can about the world around you so you can make good decisions on how you can make life better for yourself, your family, and for those around you. Teachers, I will send you a follow-up email with all of the slides from today's event. I will also send you a link to the recording and all the information. And we hope that your kids will get out their scissors and their glue sticks and their materials to build and design with, and their notebooks and their journals, and begin to be part of our adventure as we cross America with the national parks. Thank you to Ranger Jonathan today for being on our call. Thank you to the National Park Foundation, to my colleagues, Carissa and Kim, who helped monitor everything. Can we do something real quickly? Can we, everybody, just come on camera and give me a huge smile and a huge wave so I can see all of your faces? And I just want to thank you so much for being here and for being part of this brand new event where we're getting every kid outdoors. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day. It's good to see you, and I'll see you in December. Bye. Bye. Oh, I love those voices.
I got a green one, and so when the farmer's not in it, you can open it, and then when the farmer's are in it,
You could shut it so the farmers get more shade.
So the farmers can get shade? That's a good idea. So a greenhouse that can, when the farmers aren't there, you can open it up so it can get warm. And then you can give shade to the farmers while they're in there. That's brilliant, Noah. Thank you.
You get this in the water, like to collect the trash and go on
Oh, the sand. What problem are you solving?
to get the trash.
The trash out our bay, our Monterey Bay. Oh, nice job, Sophia.